What's up, everyone? This is Jeremy from Five Finger Death Punch, and you're listening to Toxic Radio. Don't play it safe, play it toxic.
Hey, this is Kel Mitchell, and you're listening to Toxic Radio. Uh-oh, it's getting toxic.
What's up? This is Tobin from Papa Roach. You're listening to Toxic Radio. Don't play it safe, play it toxic.
Once every generation, there comes an event that alters how we perceive our world. That changes our expectations of what is possible. This is not really one of those events. But hey, Toxic Radio has a brand new studio, and that fucking rocks. So join us in celebrating our excellent new home. Toxic Radio. Awesomer than ever before. Wow, that is so a word. So, been about a year now, we've been quarantined, social distancing, and now it's the dead of winter on top of it all. Like a lot of us, you might be getting more than a little down, agitated perhaps. Okay, I'll say it. Completely fucking batshit. Well, the good news is, Toxic Radio is here for you, and we understand. We're going to be doing... Wait, hold up. Can we dial it down a notch? We're being encouraging here, not selling sports drinks. Much obliged. We're going to be doing everything we can to keep you entertained and distracted with our lineup of shows, from Supreme's Funky Contradiction and Hungry for Hope to Paradelphia and Wire to Wire. And never forget, the best music you can't find anywhere else. Toxic Radio, doing our best to help you stay sane. Seriously, can someone please shut him up?
Hungry for Hope Nation. Reckless Donnie Hart here live, and man, do we have a show today. I'm excited, but first, let my co-host introduce himself. Co-host, Big Time!
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. That introduction has been brought to you by Ray's Energy Drink. This week's flavor of the week, Mango Guava. Remember, order on repsports.com. Use code BIGTIME.
Tim, you're a sellout. And we're also joined by Yanni the Greek. Yanni, say hi.
What's going on, gentlemen? Tim, you're quickly becoming one of the best salespeople I know. Look at you, man. You know, like a proud papa over here.
If he could sell this show as good as he sells that drink, we'll be on to something.
Making a dime.
But we're also, tonight, we have on this show Michael Allen Belh. I've been talking about him for weeks. He's amazing. I'm not going to wait any longer. We're going to bring on Michael Allen Belh right now. Michael.
What's happening, Donnie? What's up, guys?
Hey, what's up, man? I can't hear you right there. Mike, we got the volume. He'll fix out the volume. But we got till Toxic Mike gets the volume. I'm sure he'll fix it real quick. You can't hear, right?
Yeah, everything will be fine. I cannot hear Mike, but right now. But
so let me tell you about the guests.
Intro him.
You know,
you got me.
We got you now. I was gonna speak for you, but you're here. What's up, man? Thanks for being on the show, Mike.
Good to go, right?
We're good to go. We're ready to rock. Hungry for
Absolutely.
Hope
What's
Nation.
happening, Donnie and Tim? How you guys making it out?
What's going on, Mike?
We got another Paulsboro guy. We're like the Paulsboro to Rutgers pipeline. That's what we are now. And Glassboro. You got to throw Glassboro in, I guess. But Mike, thanks for being on this show. I've told a lot of people about your story. We've been sharing about you. You're from Paulsboro. You played on some amazing sports teams. You went Division I, two-sport athlete. And now, you know, you mentor youth. You run Relentless Pursuit. You have about 20 years teaching at Glassboro High. But you tell your story best. Tell us, you're from Paulsboro. Where did your story start? I know it wasn't too pretty in the beginning. Tell us your story, man.
Well, if we go back to senior year, to be honest with you, a couple weeks after winning a state championship in the midst of a 63-game winning streak, which is, still a state record today, was getting ready to begin a wrestling season where, the team was in 25 straight state team titles, not a state record, but a national record. And my goal was to be a state champ. And I was a couple weeks away from signing a full athletic scholarship to go to Rutgers. And from the outside, everything probably looked really well. But on the inside, I had been struggling, man. I had been struggling for a long period of time with mental health issues, with depression, anxiety, stress, PTSD. And I ended up quitting wrestling. And I'm going to take you back, though, to when I was 7 years old, to where all this stuff really stemmed from. I lived in a house where I was sexually abused. There was physical abuse, emotional. There was neglect, physical and emotional. Household dysfunction, where there was alcohol and drug abuse. There was domestic violence almost on a daily basis. Stepfather had been to jail. Mom ended up getting divorced, but there was one incident where, my stepdad attacked my mom, and I had to stab my stepdad in the back with a knife, man. So I was through a lot of traumatic stuff, by the age of 7. And that was tough on me. I was struggling. And without a doubt, there was a couple times in there where, I was sexually abused, and I started thinking about killing my stepdad. And the thoughts were there. And there was one day in particular where I was going to end up acting on that, and my mom ended up coming home. And luckily, we ended up getting out of that house. We ended up homeless. We're living in a shelter in Camden, but we ended up getting to Paulsboro. And when we moved to Paulsboro, I kind of thought that all these things were going to kind of be left behind. As a young kid, end of first grade, end up in Paulsboro, and it was a struggle. We were on welfare. My mom was a waitress, making $1,000, between $600 and $1,000 a month, trying to raise 4 kids, and it was a struggle for her. She had been through a lot, and I give her a lot of credit. And it had to be tough raising kids like that, and it was a struggle for me dealing with the mental health issues because nobody knew what was going on with me because we didn't speak to anybody. And I got to about 10 years old, and I started searching for something, man. I was searching for the love of my dad, and I had really not known him up at that time. He had been around here and there, and I started venturing outside my house. And like I said, my mom was a waitress, so she was always away. And there was one time when I was 11 years old, I left the house and I didn't come back. I didn't come back for 3 weeks. And actually, no one even knew that I was gone. I was at a friend's house, and my mom had called there after 3 weeks and was like, hey, he's got to get home. The person was like, hey, look, he's been here for 3 weeks. And I kind of felt like, I almost felt like a little bit invisible, like nobody knew where I was at. And we hit about 12 years old, and I started to grow. I started to stick out big time. I was like 6'2", whatever I am right now. I was 6'2". I was about 170.
We got a picture of you when you were. I got a little league picture of you. We're gonna put it up, not to cut you off. When you were 12 years old, and you grew. That's one thing to say. You look like like you told me. People thought you drove the bus in this little league baseball picture I got of you. You were 12 in that picture, right? There's you in wrestling, but we have the little league picture of you too.
Right. I started to grow, and the thing is I didn't grow ever again since that age because I was dealing with a lot of stress. I started to excel at sports, though, Donnie, and I started to stick out with sports. There's a little league
there
picture.
You are.
That's me in the middle. Yeah, the people thought that I'm actually one of the coaches, but actually we're all 12 years old there. It's crazy. After that, see, the crazy thing is with that picture, 12 years old, the time of that picture, I'm playing with G.I. Joes, baseball cards, and shortly after that Little League season, I was searching for the love of my dad, man. And I didn't really know him that well, like I said, and I got the bright idea that I was going to steal money out of my mom's pocketbook, write a note, and I was going to run away on a Greyhound bus to Miami, Florida to find my dad. And that's what I was content with doing. And on that bus ride down, Donnie, I was thinking the whole time of what it was going to be like to tell my dad that I loved him and to hear it back and to live, just have a fresh start down there. I couldn't, the things that I had been through, the sexual abuse and the stabbing of my stepdad, I couldn't get those things out of my head, man. I really couldn't. I was triggered all the time by whenever I saw a knife. I still, to this day, I'm able to deal with it a little bit better. So I get down into Miami, Florida, Donnie. 2-day bus ride, thinking about how great it's going to be and my life's going to change. And I get to the bus stop and I call my grandma and she gets my dad to pick me up. And guys, I'm home within 24 hours. Home, back in Jersey. On the way to the airport, I told my dad, I said, I love you. And he never said nothing back. I would go 40 years of my life without ever hearing a male figure tell me that they love me. And being an adult now and having a 13-year-old kid in the other room, yeah, that's an important, man. If you really think about that, it blows your mind.
That must have had where some people are just so used to growing up to hearing "I love you" from their parents, and you didn't have that, and you searched that. I can imagine being, what were you, 13 then?
So I was 12 years old. Man.
12 years old on a bus going to get that, just to hear them words, and you get there, and for your father to send you back within 24 hours. As a 12-year-old, I can only imagine the effect that had on you. You were searching for that love, and he basically turned you down.
We were sitting in a diner, and I looked across from him, and I said, when I said I love you, and it said nothing back, and he looked me straight in the face, Donnie, and he was like, Michael, I never wanted to have any children. And that was like a ton of bricks on my chest. What I didn't know at the time, Donnie, was that my dad divorced my mom when she was pregnant with me, and there was alcohol and there was drug use in there, and he said he didn't want to have kids. And I get back to Paulsboro, and within 2 weeks, Donnie, I'm drinking alcohol. I got a fake ID, drinking in the Paulsboro motel. And it's just like this, man. Baseball cards and playing with toys, and now I'm drinking in a bar, alcoholic at age 12, Donnie. And then I start breaking and entering into homes and stealing stuff. And it was just changed like night and day. Within 2 months, Donnie, dealing cocaine. Guy in a bar got me started dealing drugs, and my mom's making $1,000 a month, raising 4 kids, and I'm making $3,500 selling cocaine, making $14,000 a month. Started gambling.
You still playing Little League baseball and sports at this time, or
are you hiring?
Absolutely. I would leave school. In seventh, because I went into 7th grade the next year. I would leave school at 7th grade and go to the bar. It was crazy. I started hanging around with older people. See, Donnie, I was looking for love, man. And when kids don't get that these days, people will climb mountains, Donnie, searching for love. And I just happened to get on a bus going to Miami searching for that. And that event crushed me. Within 3 years, Donnie, end of freshman year, I find myself locked up in jail, Clarksboro. They're getting ready to send me to Jamesburg. Freshman year was horrible. I had 3 years really where I wasn't attending school. I was on a drug dealer schedule, Donnie. I had people knocking on my windows at nighttime. My room used to be on the bottom floor. I had to go to the top floor because there was just a lot of traffic. And when you're dealing drugs like that, you're in a lot of bad places. And it went from night to day quick. And freshman year was just horrible, man. I ended up quitting football. Ended up quitting wrestling for a short period of time.
And you were at Paulsboro High School at this time, correct?
Absolutely. And I had played soccer. I actually went out for football, Donnie, and I got cut from the team. And writing a book with Bill Evans, he's like, they don't cut people in midgets, Mike. And I'm like, I'm telling you, they did. I got cut. I told me I wasn't any good. So I played soccer.
Who's that guy who cut you? He should lose his job. You went on to play Division 1, 2 sports. That guy's probably the worst at his job. No offense, but he's fired.
I'm not going to say his name. But a lot of those guys that were on that team I ended up playing with in high school, and they were good football players. Baseball, freshman year, end up getting suspended from some team. Almost, I had a lot of risky behavior, man. Almost fathered a child. So gambling, lost $10,000 that freshman year. This is all freshman year. Lost $10,000 gambling. Where was Yanni the Greek act for that? Man, Jesus, I could use
he would have helped you lose it.
Yeah, you probably would have lost more if he was around.
It was just not a good scenario the way that it went. And I find myself in Clarksboro, and I'm in there for about 3 weeks. And
The juvenile
they were gonna send me
detention.
up- Yeah, they were going to send me up to Jamesburg, and
That's the juvenile. For anybody who
Paulsboro-
doesn't know, that's the juvenile place in New Jersey where they send juveniles jail.
And Paulsboro was getting ready to go to Iowa for the 2-week intensive wrestling camp. And I go to court, and I'm in there shackled and handcuffed, going through, and it was a shock, man, because when you get locked up and they close those doors behind you, they really. I tell the kids in high school, it gets real, man, because everybody thinks you're tough, but then when you get locked up like that, and they let me out of jail to go to the wrestling camp because they knew I was going to be gone for 2 weeks.
With
And
Paulsboro.
Donnie, I was in Iowa for 2 days, and it was the intensive wrestling camp. And I swear to you, Donnie, after 2 days, I was like, send me back to jail. I'll go back to jail because it was so tough at the wrestling camp. And I was dead serious.
Some people don't know. I know a lot of people tuned in. We had Alex Sylvester. He talked about Paulsboro, but for people who don't know, Paulsboro, man, this isn't just a regular high school. This is like the best wrestling and football program in the country some years. They're national power. When you were there, they broke national records. They're like the best of the best.
They won the division from 92 to 97 straight.
Right when you were there. So this is a big deal, you being there.
Yeah, there was 25 straight years, though, of a state championship. They had not lost a conference match in a long period of time.
So you went out to Iowa with them, and
yeah, and I get out and get back to New Jersey, and they send me to Scared Straight, Rahway State Prison with 11 other people, man. And when I was locked up, it didn't dawn on me until I was locked up that I had missed so much school, Donnie. I really couldn't read that well. We had to go to school in jail, and I remember trying to read. We were reading like something on a 3rd grade level, and I couldn't really read the stuff, and the guys in jail were making fun of me. And I was just like, what am I doing to myself, man? Just killing myself. Just my actions. I had to take complete ownership of this stuff. And the thing that I was missing the most, guys, I was missing a positive male role model and just role models in general. And they were in the place that I was skipping all the time. They were right at Paulsboro, man. The teachers, the coaches, community members. Paulsboro is a great place, and I was skipping so much school. Imagine the stress that I'm putting on the teachers trying to teach me math, and I'm not even there half the time. So I start my sophomore year. I start excelling at sports. Football, we start this winning streak, 63 games. We only lost one time the last 3 years. But I started to do things a little bit better. My grades, though, were horrible. We got, by the end of my sophomore year, Donnie, I was getting recruited by schools for football. But my GPA going into my junior year, I had a 1.0 and a 5.10 on the SAT. Donnie, they give you 500 for just put your name on the SAT. I had a 5.10.
Maybe you spelled your name wrong. Who knows, Michael? I've seen crazier.
My Lord. Something crazy, though, happened at the end of my sophomore year. At the end of my sophomore year, something crazy happened. I get Student of the Month. Tim, Yanni, I don't know how I got it, but I got Student of the Month, and I remember talking to one of the teachers, and they were like, it's more than grades. And that gesture at Paulsboro, it gave me hope, Donnie. Hungry for hope. It gave me hope that I could be a better student by just being a better person and putting some effort in. And that was a catalyst at that moment for me changing.
That was sophomore? That was sophomore?
End of my sophomore year.
Now,
so we go in.
You had the sports. I just want to stop. Like the sports, I'm sure people have told you before, your freshman, sophomore, that you were good at sports. You excel at that. But actually hearing you were good at something besides sports, come from your background, I'm sure that, that probably gave you, like you said, hope to actually hear somebody said, you're Student of the Month. You're like the best person. Nothing to do with sports. Hearing that, man, I'm sure that woke you up a little.
It did, because here's the deal. My mom, her side, they had 11 kids. Only 3 people only 3 graduated high school. In my family, everybody dropped out. My sister dropped out, and she ended up getting her diploma. Thank God, right? Thank God she got her diploma, but she didn't graduate the traditional way. And I was like, it did feel special, because when it's the norm to drop out of school and you go and do something like that, it's good. So we get into junior year, and my grades start improving, right? And I'm getting recruited by a bunch of different schools. And I was slipping up here and there. I remember this guy brought me over to his house. His name was Mr. Vojaning. He come over and he asked me over for dinner. He's got my report card in his hand, and I go in and he's like, "So you're getting recruited by Clemson, North Carolina State, Maryland?" He goes, "How are you going to go to these schools when you got a D in English at Paulsboro?" And it kind of like hit me in the face, man. He was absolutely right, because I was slacking off a little bit, but I started to turn things around. And, we get to that senior year, and I had the drinking problem the whole time, and I was experimenting with drugs. It wasn't really bad at the time, but it was doing drugs, man. But the drinking was a problem, and I don't think anybody really knew how bad the drinking problem was besides me. I did have a teacher one time, she, looked at me straight in the face. She was like, "You're an alcoholic." I turned around. I thought, Donnie, she was talking to somebody else, and she was talking to me. So I think some people know about that, but it was a problem. And we get to senior year, and football team ain't lost in a long time, win a state championship. My goal was to be a state champ at 215 pounds wrestling. That was the goal. And we get into wrestling season. We get one match in, and I end up quitting. And I was struggling, though, Donnie. I was struggling mentally. And I had been arrested at the end of my junior year. I got arrested for a domestic violence incident. And my whole life, I despised my stepdad from the sexual abuse.
This is the one you stabbed, too, at. You stabbed your stepfather, what, 7?
I was 7 years old, and I despised him. And then I started, Donnie, to turn into him. And it scared the hell out of me, because I didn't want to grow up like that. And then all of a sudden, I am that. And when I was looking in the mirror, I saw my stepdad. And I started getting to the point where, Donnie, I didn't want to live anymore. And I was to the point where I felt like I was going to hurt somebody or hurt myself. And I ended up quitting wrestling, because all through football season, man, I was planning on killing myself. I just didn't want to live. I wasn't sure if I was going to make it grade-wise.
So you didn't plan on being there for the state championship, because you planned on committing suicide?
Yeah, there was a couple different times. I was really trying to get through football season. I was just trying to get to the next day, Donnie. I was trying to get to breakfast the next day. And I felt like if I could get to breakfast the next day, I'd keep on living. There were a couple different times where I planned things out, and I just didn't do it. And then one night, Donnie, I ended up getting liquored up and drove my car into a telephone pole, man, trying to commit suicide. And at the last minute, Donnie, at the last second, I started to hit the brake, because I had this vision, man. I was like, this is not how my life's going to end. And I think in that moment, Donnie, I hit rock bottom. And what people don't realize is rock bottom's a great foundation to build upon. All right. It really is. And you don't have to hit it to build upon it. But in that moment, I decided, number one, I wanted to live. I wanted to get to Rutgers, and I wanted to try to beat this thing, man. I didn't want to turn out, and I didn't want to take my own life because of the impact of what I had, the toxic trauma that I was dealing with.
Now, Mike, you say you were at that point, man. You drank and you were going to commit suicide. You're driving into that telephone pole, man. That's just a point I want to get across to people. You came right before you came to it that you were about to kill yourself, and you hit the brakes, and you realized this wasn't worth it, right? That must have been a hell of an experience.
Yeah, totaled the car.
Tough times don't last. Tough people do. Ray said that perfect.
Yeah, absolutely. And I got through that moment. I end up moving out of my house, and I move in with Mike Funk. It's like a dad to me. And
John Diamond said he remembers you were living in the Funk's basement.
I was living in the laundry room. What people don't realize was they had a wrestling mat in the laundry room. So the washer and dryers in there. I slept on the wrestling mat. But
they're a big time wrestling family, MMA and all that.
Absolutely. The Funks multiply like rabbits, man. Jesus. But they took me in, and Mr. Funk taught me what it was like to live like a family. And, showed me it was a male figure showing that they cared for me. Paul, wrestling coach at Paulsboro, cared for me. Glenn Howard, my teachers, great impact. All right. But I ended up getting to Rutgers, Donnie. Mr. Funk got me off to Rutgers. And freshman year at Rutgers, my goal was to go to the NFL. I wasn't. I never really thought about graduating from.
You went to Rutgers on
college.
for football and wrestling, correct?
Yep, signed a full athletic scholarship to play football at Rutgers, and I said, you know what? I'm going to go to the NFL in 4 years. That's what I thought. I mean, a young kid. That's what my goal was. Christ, nobody even found graduate high school, let alone I'm going to graduate college now. And freshman year, played right away. Played behind two guys that went to the NFL. And sophomore year, come in, and I'm getting ready to start. And a week before the first game, devastating knee injury, Donnie. Tore every major ligament in my left knee. And got injured on one day. Next day, had surgery. Doctor told me, he was like, look, we're going to get you walking. I'm not sure if you're going to be able to play football again. And that was probably, Donnie, the wrong thing to tell an alcoholic, because that absolutely crushed me, because I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't plan on graduating from college, and it was a struggle. It was a struggle dealing with that injury. We have to have the surgery, and we get into the football season, and I'm rehabbing, and we get to homecoming game, and I'm supposed to go to the stadium to rehab and go to the game. And Donnie, I'm an alcoholic. I've been drinking the whole time and missing classes. And instead of going to the game, Donnie, I went to the bar at 9 o'clock in the morning and stayed in the bar till 5 o'clock. And I tried to drive out of there and get a DWI. Next thing you know, suspended from the football team. They're getting ready to give me the boot. They kept with me, though. They hung with me. And I kept fighting, Donnie, with Relentless Pursuit, man. I kept battling the alcohol problems, the mental health issues. I started doing counseling at Rutgers, and I almost told the counselor at Rutgers what I needed to tell him. My whole upbringing, because I had never told nobody that, Donnie. Nobody knew nothing.
You kept it in. Sometimes we do that as men. I feel like we keep in our feelings. We were talking about that on the other week episode. You probably didn't know how to open up about your feelings, did you?
No, and people would listen. Everybody listening here, everybody thinks that staying silent is safe. Silence is safe.
94.
Yeah, big God, Jesus. And 160 now, triathlete. But so listen, like, everybody thinks silence is safe. I'm going to tell you right now, everybody listening, silence is not safe. You got to communicate. You got to communicate to the right people. And Donnie, I battled back. And not only did I come back and start a bunch of games my last 3 years, but I ended up coming back and playing 2 Division I sports. And that was a big deal for me because, number one, they weren't sure if I was going to come back at all. And I struggled academically. Almost got kicked out twice from Rutgers.
And you were wrestling. You were wrestling at this time?
Yeah, I wrestled because I wanted to get I was trying to get things going with my knee, man.
You know how hard that is, though? All this stuff you went through, and here you are at Rutgers, Division I, wrestling and playing football. That's like unheard of. And you're going to class. You might not be doing great, but you were still there. That's unheard of.
It was a challenge. It was a challenge. And then during the winters anyway, I really wasn't going back. I went back to the Funks like one time, and then the other times I kind of just stayed up. I stayed up by myself during the holidays. One holiday I went home with a teammate. But it was a challenge. We get to senior year, Donnie, and the goal was still to go to the NFL, but I started to realize that to be quite honest with you, I wasn't good enough. I wasn't consistent enough with everything else I had going on. I just wasn't one of those players that was going to be able to go to the NFL. And senior year, I started attending these leadership sessions with Rutgers football, and I meet a guy by the name of Bob Heron, and he starts teaching us these leadership things, this thing called the 7 Laws of Leadership, and it's responsibility and setting goals and action plan. And I was connected to this stuff, Donnie. It was interesting to me, and it was some of the stuff was actually helping me a little bit. But the end of the season came, and we were like 1-10, horrible. We had a bunch of injuries, and I took the leadership stuff. It was I put it in a orange milk crate, the old milk crates we used to use for like hockey ball. And I put them in the milk crate, and I put it in my closet, and I forgot about them. And a month after the season, I realized I wasn't going to the NFL, and I went out with people probably shouldn't have been hanging with, and I tried my first line of cocaine. Donnie, instantly, boom, hooked like that. Hooked. Could not stop, tried, couldn't stop. So now you're talking about mental health issues, what am I going to do? Am I going to graduate college? I end up graduating, which was good. But it was a big time struggle. And now I got another problem. You got the alcohol problem, and now I got a drug problem. And I started teaching. I started teaching at Glassboro. And it was really, Donnie, it was like I was living like a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde type life. You know, I was teaching, and then I was alcoholic, drugs, the cocaine led to crystal meth, ecstasy, and it was just a problem for about 8 years, man. And it was a struggle. We get to about 2007, man, and I go up in November. I go up to a Rutgers game, and as a matter of fact, Alex Sylvester was playing, and I was having problems blacking out. I was drinking a lot. 2007 was a rough year. Mrs. Funk had passed away. I go into the wing bowl, and I start eating. I try to stop doing drugs, and I try to start eating.
Hold up, you were in the wing bowl. I got to stop you there, Mike. You know, we have good friend El Wingador.
Just slip it in there, you know?
Yeah, well, Yanni caught that right away. Yanni like put his hand up. He's like, "Hold up." We had El Wingador on the show. He's one of our favorite guests, man. He comes on the show. He helps us. How did you get in the wing bowl? He was a 5-time champion. Were you coming after El Wingador? Were you coming for the title?
I did break the record. I didn't have a record for 10 minutes. I broke it at the Trap Tavern, and that was 68 wings in 10 minutes. That's actually how I got into the wing bowl. I was trying to stop doing what I was doing. And then next thing you know, I was like, I'll just eat. And what people don't realize is, and you had the person on the other week that was talking about this, you change one addiction for another. And I just started blowing up, man. I was just eating a lot. And then I was like, you know what? I'll go in the wing bowl. And that was bad because I was just masking things, man. I was really struggling mentally, you know, the drugs, the alcohol. And in 2007, I was pretty sure, Donnie, I wasn't going to make it through the year. There was a couple times where, you know, I was very close to overdosing. I'm talking have to get in a tub and ice, but the problem was I kept going after it and going. It was just risky behavior, man. And we get to November of 2007. I go up to a Rutgers game, and I'm with a couple people, and you know, drugs and alcohol, and we're staying at the Hyatt Hotel, and we go to the game. We go out afterwards. You know, we're having fun. And I remember walking into the Hyatt, Donnie, and the next thing I remember, I'm in the hospital, waking up in the hospital, and I didn't know what was going on. And they told me that I was at the top of the building and I was getting ready to jump off and commit suicide. And I was just like, man, I didn't know what to think, man. I was like, I didn't remember it, but I believe it because it happened. But that's how far I was. I just didn't think that my life really mattered. I thought that if I was gone, it wouldn't matter to anybody. And I was wrong. You get a month later, we get out, and the crazy thing was my behavior didn't change. The next day I'm still partying, and we get exactly, Donnie, 1 month after the hospital, and skip work on a Friday. We have a party in my apartment. We're doing drugs, gambling, drinking, and I thought that this weekend was going to be it, that I wasn't going to be around. And I saw this thing on TV. I don't know what it was. I'm looking at it and I'm like, what the hell is this guy doing? And he's doing this thing called the Iron Man. And the only Iron Man I knew was Tony Stark, Marvel character, Iron Man. And the crazy thing was, he talked hungry for hope and hope. When I saw this thing, there was a light bulb.
You were a broken man. You were a broken man at this point, man. You were in the hospital a month before. You had suicide tendencies. You were broken at this point. Is that right to say? Drugs and
yeah, I didn't know if I was going to make it to the next calendar year, Donnie. It had been a rough year, and when I saw this guy doing this Ironman, he was just like me, Donnie. Started drinking at 12, arrested, all these different things, and we want to talk about hope and the catalyst for a transformation. I said, I'm going to do an Ironman. Donnie, I was 300 pounds Yanni, I was sweating getting out of bed in the morning. Like getting out of bed, I was sweating walking to the fridge. And I told the people, I got like 9 people in my apartment. for a 4-day binger. And I told them I'm doing the Ironman. And they looked at me and they were like, dude, you're an alcoholic drug addict and you can't even walk out of your bedroom without sweating. You're not doing anything. And I was like, you know what? Right now, they're absolutely right. They're right. We go through about another couple hours, and you know what? Donnie, I was like, you know what? The party's over, big dog. That's it. I kicked everybody out, and I said, I'm going to put the effort I put in trying to kill myself, doing drugs, and the risky behavior, I'm going to put into changing my friggin' life and getting my life back because I wanted it back. And I knew it was going to take effort. I knew it was going to take relentless pursuit, but I was hell-bent on doing this. I was going to go from addict to Ironman triathlete, and nobody was going to get in my way. And that's exactly what I did, Donnie. I started training. You know, first time I went swimming, Donnie, I could not get to the other end of the pool. I don't know if you guys know this, but the Ironman triathlon, guys, is a 2.4-mile swim. You get out of the water, you get on a bike, you bike 112 miles. Yanni, that's from here to Atlantic City, so you can place a bet and then come back.
Oh, perfect. Okay. Yeah. Now I understand.
Yes. Now you get off the bike and then you run 26 miles, man. It's a full marathon. And
I can't imagine
26 miles.
No, I couldn't. I couldn't imagine it myself, but I put this seed in my head and I said, this is what I'm going to do.
I have a hard time driving to the studio.
Oh, it was crazy. I got in the rowing pool and I tried swimming to the other end and I couldn't make it. Guys, I couldn't make it to the other end. I said, how am I going to swim? I said, either a shark is going to eat me or I'm going to drown, one or the other. Not going to be able to do it. But I kept after it with relentless pursuit. And I kept after it. I got up the next day and I kept going. And then I got a bike. And I got on the bike. And I couldn't make I went right around the block at rowing. I said, I thought you think you know how to ride a bike, but you don't know how to ride 112. But I kept after it, day in and day out. Then I went and got running shoes and a GPS watch. I literally went to Glassboro High School. I was living there, right by there. And I went around the track. I couldn't get around the track. I said, how am I going to do this? But I kept after it with relentless pursuit. I was so hell-bent on changing my life. I got everybody that I was hanging around with, I got out of my life. And I want to be very honest with you guys. Everything that I did my whole life, I take ownership for. I'm the one who sold cocaine when I was 12. I'm the one who went to go hang out with the old guys and get the fake ID. I'm the one who got 20 fake ID. Like, I'm the one who did that stuff. I'm the one who quit school. Nobody peer pressured me. Nobody. I had to take complete ownership of my own life, you know? And I just cut everybody off, man. And we get to 2009 and I start doing races. And I went from 305 pounds to about 170. And I was pretty chiseled, but I was doing everything. I started teaching differently. I was just a different person. And I started to realize how far I was gone, man.
Can you elaborate on how you were teaching differently? Sorry to cut you off there, but
yeah, I think when I was teaching in the beginning, number one, I felt like I was two different people. You know, I was an alcohol, drug addict, gambling addict, and I was teaching to make a paycheck. And then I started teaching to add value to the kids because I realized, Yanni, that a lot of the kids were just like me, man. And I started to realize that I can start to change the lives of these kids if you start to treat them better. Like, I wasn't treating them bad in the beginning at all. Don't get that wrong. But just like listening to the kids with empathy, man. When the kids are talking to you, Donnie, telling you a story, you actually sit there and listen to the kid because you can learn about them and learn how to teach them a little bit differently. So I started to everything started to change.
We're having people even on our chat, not to cut you off, we've had multiple people already said they were students of yours, you mentor them, fellow co-workers, people from Paulsboro. I can go through the list. We've been getting a lot of people messaging saying how they're so happy to have you in their life. I just wanted to mention that, man. Christina Duffy, Alexis George, Tony Gentile Ware. I can go through the list. We had Anthony, I think, was on there. We have a lot of them. I just can't say them all. But so you're having an impact.
And some of those people are people that I teach with now, and that's why I would like when you start teaching better. You start teaching like Christina Duffy on there and Alexis George, who I'm teaching with now. She's an English teacher, but
Anthony said you're one of his mentors. Anthony
absolutely,
Pritchett.
in my leadership club, and Yanni, and guys, I started doing things just differently, man. I started to think about adding value to other people. And I think that's when things really started to change. When you start to add value to other people, it comes back to you in one way or another. And, I get to about 2011, and I had been racing and traveling around the world. I went to Hawaii. Guys, Yanni, I packed up my stuff, and I lived in a hotel in Hawaii and was just training there and did a race there. I was racing in Puerto Rico, and I wasn't hanging around anybody. Like, I was convinced that if I was going to do this, I had to do it alone. I didn't want any help from anybody else on the outside. I had to do it for myself, for my inside, because I had not, up to that moment, I didn't believe in myself. And you got to believe in yourself, and you got to love yourself if you want to change. And that's one of the things that I try to tell kids. How can I change? Number one, you got to believe you can, but you got to love yourself. And I didn't love myself for the longest period of time. I was just beating myself up. And I think a lot of the times when I was training, man, it was like almost I was running away from all those bad things, man. It was just like doing the Ironman was amazing to me. We get to 2010, the first Ironman I do, I show up, I'm in Louisville, Kentucky, and it's 100, check this out. I already told you it's 140.6 miles. I get to Louisville, Kentucky. I drive by myself, Louisville, Kentucky, straight through, which is a bad idea. And I get there, and it's 130 degrees heat index, and we're getting ready to do the Ironman. I was like, oh, my God. I said, how the hell am I going to do this? It's 130 degrees in the morning. So get in the water, and we get through this thing, man. I start swimming. I'm biking through Louisville, hotter than hell. And we're coming up on the finish line. It's like 13 hours into the race. And I like blacked out going through the finish line. I was just had a flashback of my whole life. And I was like, man, I said, if I can do this, anybody can do anything. And the first thing I said to myself when I walked through the finish line, depleted, after racing for 13 hours in 130-degree heat, Donnie, I said, I can do this faster. And I said, I can do this faster. And that's exactly what I did. I went back the next year, and I was like, I was 2 hours and something faster. I went under 11 hours.
That must have been, the competitive nature in you. You did play 2 sports Division I college. I don't think people realize how unheard of and amazing that is. You were a key player on one of the greatest teams in the nation at Paulsboro High School. All this stuff, I'm sure this was like your way of, getting your life back through your relentless pursuit and your athletics, and pretty amazing.
It was. I mean, I felt like, and I still feel like, I got a lot of stuff that I want to prove. I mean, I love teaching and adding value to the kids. And, the things that I had to realize was, I started to figure out how the hell am I changing my life? And I went out on this bike ride one time, and I'm like, what is making me successful? And I went on this 110-mile bike ride, and I pulled over like 3 times. I started writing stuff down. And I wrote down these things called the 7 pillars of living a successful life. 7 pillars of living a successful life. And number 1 was sleep. I had to start sleep. I started sleeping right. Number 2, right, is nutrition. I started eating better. I wasn't eating 10 Big Macs and getting ready to go in the wing bowl. Exercise. I started using those 7 laws of leadership that I learned at Rutgers, and I started putting these things into use in my own life. Healthy relationship, guys. I started to focus on only being around healthy relationships. I tell the kids, don't be around any energy vampires that suck the life out of you. And then, I started practicing mindfulness, man. And people are like, well, oh, what do you got to sit there and practice yoga? And I'm like, that's not really about that. It's about just being present and having thoughts that you have self-awareness of your thoughts, feelings, and surroundings. And then really the last part to that of the 7 pillars, guys, and you had the person on the other week, was mental health. I had to come to the grips that I had some mental health issues that I needed to be able to deal with because they had taken my life for a long period of time. And even till this day, I'm always going to have bouts of depression, anxiety. Every time I see a knife, Yanni, I envision stabbing my stepdad. It's not something that ever goes away, ever. I was body shamed when I was being sexually abused. There was things that happened where, with my weight. And even to this day, I'm 43 years old, and I have people that say something to me about my weight. Oh, you're too skinny. It triggers me. Donnie, it'll trigger me, and it makes me have flashbacks. I can't help it, but it just goes to that thing of we always got to be conscious of our mental health. And I tell the kids, it's the biggest problem today in the world, man. People need to know that it is okay, Donnie, not to be okay. It is. But you got to be able to talk to somebody, and you got to talk to the right person. I got going so good with Ironman and the racing. I never really even thought about getting a woman in my life. I was like, damn, I said, I'll just be single. I was like, Donnie, I'll just be single the rest of my life, and that's it. And I always thought that I wanted to have kids, but I was going to be honest with you guys. I was actually scared to have my own kids because I didn't want them to go through what I went through. And when you go through the trauma that I went through, there's this thing called intergenerational trauma. And if you don't know what that is, I'll explain. It's when you grow up in a household with domestic violence and drug use. When you grow up, you put your kids through that same stuff. And I didn't want, if I had a child, to have the mental health issues. My father found out when he died. Unfortunately, I had to go get his stuff and going searching through his house, Donnie, and I found stuff from the VA. And my father had tried to kill himself about a half a dozen times. There was alcoholism, and I'm like, man, is that where I get my stuff from? I was 2011. Things are going smooth, and I go into Dunkin' Donuts, Yanni, Dunkin' Donuts, and there's this girl in front of me, and I'm like, hey, why don't you try the Dunkin' Donuts coffee? Try the pumpkin one.
Oh, you're so slick, Mike. You're not as good as a talker as you are a football player.
I believe the kids call that game.
Yes, it was the Dunkin' Donuts run. It was your life is running the game on Dunkin' Donuts. So I meet this girl, and we sit down. I buy her a muffin. Yeah, I spent the money, I dusted the muffs out of my wallet and bought her a muffin. And
high roller.
Start talking. Yeah, and I start talking to this girl, and we start dating. And I said this. I had dated people before, and they found out who I was, my past. And they were like, the relationship ended quick. And I was like, I'm never going to meet somebody, man. They're going to know who the hell I am, and no one's going to accept me for who I am. And I start dating this girl for a month. And Donnie, I was like, you know what? I'm going to tell this girl everything about my life from A to Z. And I go over. I was all nervous. Dude, my armpits are all blown out from sweat. We go in, and I sit down on the couch, and I'm like, hey, I want to talk to you. And I told this girl everything about my life, from the abuse, dealing drugs, being locked up. The domestic incident was tough telling her. And
this is brought to you by Dunkin' Donuts, everybody. You can get Dunkin' Donuts. There's one in every neighborhood. They got large coffee, little coffee, big coffee, and you can even find your wife there.
And
And
muffins.
this man the money.
Muffin Man, please continue. Please continue, Muffin Man.
So she goes, sitting on the couch, and I'm nervous as hell. And she looked at me, and guys, 5 of the most powerful words you can tell anybody, in all seriousness. She looked at me, and she goes, Mike, you're not that person anymore. And at that moment, I knew that I wasn't that person. I had been not doing drugs and drinking and doing the Ironman, and I was in shape for a long period of time. But it's so important for people to communicate with people and tell your loved ones that you love them and tell them how you feel. And when she told me that, it was like I don't know. I was like, I started rolling my shoulders out, and I was like, oh, I'm not that person anymore. And that's why, teachers can have that impact on kids by just talking to them and telling them how they feel. But man, lo and behold, the woman who told me that is now my wife. She had a 4-year-old child at the time, Logan. So we have a child, and that was probably one of the greatest moments, in my life, because it was just one of those things where I felt like I was noticed, like I felt like somebody cared for me, and that really meant a lot to me, because I wasn't so sure if I was ever going to be able to have a relationship like that. To be honest with you, ever. I had been so used to dating girls that were doing drugs and drinking, and then when I wasn't doing when I was doing well, I tried to date people, and they would always find out about my past.
There's Logan and your wife up there on the screen. We just want to put up the picture.
Catherine.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we want to thank them for giving us, some of your time today too.
Absolutely. I lucked out because she's a teacher, and she's actually an Ironman triathlete. So we're getting ready to do an Ironman. We're going to do some family bonding in September. Family bonding for 140.6 miles, Donnie. We're going to do an Ironman together, which is pretty amazing. And it's also, she's actually a state champ. I actually coached her, and she couldn't swim, couldn't bike, couldn't run, and became a state champ. Guys, we get to like 2015, things are well, and I start to say to myself, I got to start adding value to kids. I started thinking about running a leadership club, and I felt like I wanted to be able to impact kids a little bit more in the classroom. So I started doing leadership content. The stuff that I was taught at Rutgers, I started doing in classes back in 2015. I actually did a little bit earlier, but consistently. I started a club. All right, it's called the Leadership Development Club, where we got young men in there. There are some at-risk kids, some of them single-parent households, and I really wanted to focus on adding value to other people, and that's been going well. And then, I started teaching and doing it more in the classroom and teaching with great people. I've taught with some amazing people, guys. I have a friend, Greg, that I've taught with a bunch of different times. I taught with a Miss Cox last semester. Guys, in there doing leadership stuff and social and emotional learning. And Donnie, every kid I teach in the classroom, they set family goals at home, because I'm trying to get the family life better. They set grade goals. We talk about best self traits. We do an activity called One Word. But I think if we can add more value to these kids, because look, these kids they're the future leaders, man. And I think I always say this about my son, Donnie, my goal is to raise Logan and to be a better person than me. And he is. Parents should want to raise their kids to have them be better than them. And if everybody's doing that, we're going to have a very successful world if we can get people doing that. But just like anything else, we have parents that do the good stuff, and there's some parents, unfortunately, that don't do the good stuff. And if we can change that behavior and get these kids, and I tell them all the time, man, the decisions you guys make will determine the life you lead, right? It'll determine the grades you have. And
Mike, we were talking, me and you were talking, the impact you have as a teacher. We were talking about some of our past and how some of my teachers, I had special needs when I was in school. I had a speech impediment, and my first grade teacher basically told me, I was stupid, and I wasn't really going to amount to anything. And as a first grader, the impact of words. We look up to teachers. They're supposed to be, our mentors, and not all of them are like you. Let's be honest. Words, just you being there, that can change somebody's life. I know it hurt me for years just hearing my teacher. I still remember it to this day. One of the only thing I probably remember from that era of my life is this teacher, just telling me I was stupid and I wasn't really going to amount to anything.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, Donnie, the teachers at Paulsboro and the coaches, I mean, I'd be dead right now, man. I would be dead. I'd be dead if I didn't have them and, some people at Rutgers. And There's no doubt about that. People are always like, well, that's not so true. I said, well, you're not living my life. I'm telling you that I wouldn't be around anymore because they gave me hope that I could be a better. It wasn't just about the curriculum stuff. It was about, Donnie, you can be a better person because every kid's not going to be book smart, but if you can add value to them. And I teach with some amazing people. Like I told you, I teach with a Miss George now, a Mr. Depp, a Mr. Sino, and I taught with last semester, Mr. Mac. These guys are amazing people, man. And for me, like I always tell people, Donnie, I'm like Gumby. When we're co-teaching together, I'm a special ed teacher and I teach with the regular ed. My job's to add value to them. It is. My job's to add value to the other teacher. And in the meantime, we add value to the kids. But Donnie, it's unfortunate that I tell kids this all the time, that there are bad police, there's bad mayors, there's bad superintendents, and unfortunately, unfortunately, there's some bad teachers. And if you go around, you talk to every principal, off the record, they'll probably say there's a couple teachers here, and there just is, man. And that's unfortunate because a teacher should never put a kid down. You should never, Donnie, things should never be personal. When you personalize something, and that's one of the things I talk to the kids about, the 7 laws of leadership, right? Take personal responsibility for yourself, set goals, create an action plan, Donnie. Understand human behavior, right? Establish trust. Here's a big one, Donnie. Correct improper behavior correctly. You never attack the person. You correct the behavior, right? And sometimes parents, teachers, you name it, they correct the behavior, and that's wrong. Because once you personalize something, Donnie, like that teacher did to you, you look at your experience. Anthony, the young kid Anthony that came on, Anthony Pritchett,
Yeah.
he told me, Donnie, he told me about an experience at Pittman before he came to Glassboro where a teacher just embarrassed him in front of everybody. And that ruined his experience as a student. And then he came to Glassboro, and that's where I met him. He's one of the first 2 kids, Donnie, to graduate from my leadership development club in the military. And then the other gentleman's in the military as well. But great kids, man. But then here's the deal, Donnie. The last part, the 7 laws of leadership, you got to lead from the front. And Donnie, Yanni, Tim, here's the best thing about leading. You don't need a title to be a leader, Donnie. Anybody can do it. But it's this. It's taking people from one place and bringing them to the next. You're taking those people from one place to the next, and you have to be taking them to a place they couldn't get to by themselves, right? Because that's what leadership is. It's not a noun. It's a verb. And when people start remembering that, the biggest problem with leaders is people are like, well, how did that person get fired? How did that happen? That's because they forgot what got them there and they stopped leading, right? Yanni, they got to the top of the ladder
every single
and then
time.
all of a sudden, it's crazy. I don't understand it. And for me, one of my problems, guys, it's part of my makeup with, I have a therapist. His name's Brett. And I have to have a therapist because I got to be able to talk to somebody because Yanni, Donnie, and Tim, I'm never going to outrun being sexually abused. I'm never going to outrun me have to stab my stepdad in the back. That is part of me, but I can't have it own me. I got to be able to recognize when I'm triggered. I've been teaching for 18 years, guys. 18 years. I've had somebody at work make fun of my weight. Think about that, Donnie. 18 years teaching, and then somebody always makes fun of my weight. You're too skinny. Then before I was too fat. People at all jobs are just, you get people that don't think, man. And the problem with me, Donnie, and Yanni, that triggers me. And what people don't realize is that's like me seeing a knife. And then I can't teach the rest of that block because I'm thinking about, the first thing I want to do is hit somebody, and I can't do that as a teacher. But damn, man, like some people can be rude, but there are so many amazing people in this world, guys. There's so many amazing people, and a lot of them are in the classrooms that we're teaching. Teaching is a great job, and if you can teach leadership to these kids, and if you can teach these kids to be better than you, just think about how great the world would be, Donnie. Look at all the great stuff you guys are doing with Hungry for Hope, man. You know, it's you got to want to be able to add value to people. You know, you got to want to be able to do that. People are
We
always
got
like
Alex. Alex is watching. I don't want to cut you off. Alex Sylvester just said, "Man, truly inspirational." He never really knew the depth of your full story.
Right.
He was our guest a couple weeks ago.
I started telling the story, guys, because we had a kid commit suicide at Glassboro, and I had him in class, and I was on vacation, and I'm like, man, I said, Donnie, what if I just shared my story with that kid? What if I told him that you're not alone, man?
You weren't
What if
sharing
I'd have said,
you weren't sharing your
No,
story.
no,
I know it must have been
no,
hard being a teacher. Were you scared? Why? Is that why you weren't sharing?
To be honest with you, obviously when I was doing drugs, crystal meth and cocaine, you're not running around saying, hey, I'm doing this. No, I was, when I turned my life around, and I was so scared, guys, Yanni, I was so scared to tell people that I had mental health issues, because, it's so taboo. It's so taboo to tell people you have mental health issues.
That's been kind of what we've been tackling the past few weeks here, and just trying to let everybody know it's okay,
Yanni, why would you tell somebody that? Because guess what? They're going to fire you. That's not true. It's not true. But it's so taboo for adults, teachers, to tell kids to be human. Like, it's okay. It's okay not to be okay. And for a long, when things turned around, guys, to answer the question, I went about 4 years, and I started giving little nuggets to kids. I was like, hey, I locked up here, and a kid was looking at me like, I got a criminal teaching me.
Oh,
but
you're cool.
I was like, you know what? I can share. I didn't want to tell my story for me. My mentor, Bob Herring, was like, I asked him, I said, what do I do with this story? He goes, if you're doing it for yourself, then don't tell nobody. But if you're going to do it to help somebody, then share your story. And I knew, guys, that when I shared my story, that comes with a burden of having the flashbacks and bringing back those things, man. The sexual abuse, the physical abuse. I had cigarettes put out on me. I was going to have to work extra to help other people out. And I was willing to do that if, maybe you can save somebody's life, man. And I said, you know what? Let me start talking. And, I started sharing things in the classroom and started sharing things with the leadership. And then last year I was like, you know what? I'm going to start speaking. And that's how it really started get going. And I told my wife, I was like, I think I'm going to start a motivational speaking business. And
that's Relentless Pursuit now?
Yeah, it's Relentless Pursuit.
Tell us more about that, man. I know you got the website, michaelbelh.com, but tell us more about Relentless Pursuit, LLC.
Yeah, my goal is to be able to get into, really, to schools, talk to the police, organizations, businesses, and talk to them about my story, adverse childhood experiences. But, the story of how I started getting the ball rolling with this. And I had people, Donnie, tell me, we're in a pandemic. Nobody want to hear you speak. Seriously, I had one person, I'm not going to say his name. He said, no one's going to want to hear you speak right now. And see, Donnie, you don't want to tell me something because I'm going to do the friggin' opposite, right? That's what's going to happen.
He knows all about
that. That's me, Mike.
Yes, defiant.
Right.
Well, that's one of my things, right? Because we are how we were growing up. Like, if you didn't have leadership as a kid, So I did the opposite. I said, you know what? I'm going to prove this son of a gun wrong. And I started getting things going. And next thing you know, I started getting hired. I was speaking across the country in California virtually, speaking to schools. I actually did a socially distanced assembly. But I wanted to make sure that I can add value to other people by sharing my story. So that's how that got going. Now, obviously, it's a little bit different with the pandemic, right? Because you're not necessarily going into schools, but, I'm actually, the person over at Clearview has me speaking to these SAC counselors, student assistant counselors. So there's things.
When are you speaking
So
at
the
that?
goal
Why would you want to be a sack?
That's where we went to. I went to Clearview, and I was actually blessed back in 2013 when I was doing my professional wrestling. Before I hit my hard times, I spoke at a leadership assembly there. I spoke to, I think, sophomores and incoming freshmen, and it was like one of the greatest experiences of my life. I did an assembly. It was pretty remarkable. So you're going back
I
there?
spoke for the first, the first time I spoke was at Delsey, and then I spoke at Glassboro. It's nothing like what I do now, Donnie, because you start to work your craft, and it's almost a little bit like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, because when you go out there and you're putting on your speech, you got to have energy. And in the beginning, I did not have energy. It was a little bit long, and got that down to that 35, 45 minutes, and getting student engagement. And obviously now with the pandemic, you're doing things virtual, but that's how that got going. And I'm excited for it, very patient with it. I've spoken to a bunch of different groups across the country. I spoke to groups, schools, teams. And, it's something that I'm passionate about. And I get to do it, though, Donnie, every day in school. I get to add value to each class, right? My co-teachers get to add value to me. We work together. It's a team thing. And, teaching's a great thing. And people have asked me before, like, well, would you ever stop teaching? I'm like, no, because you can reach so many kids.
You're really
you can
reaching.
reach so many
You're reaching so many people doing what you're doing. We're running short on time. I'm not getting rid of you yet, man. We still got. I just had a question for you, man. Our show's Hungry for Hope. We're all about spreading hope, giving the people, my story. I'm giving to people who might have lost hope for whatever reason. Just inspiring people, even if they still have hope, giving them more hope. What does the word hope mean to you, Mike?
Hope is the catalyst for anybody's transformation, Donnie. With it, you can achieve anything that you want in life with hope. It's what it's what we revolve around, man. But without hope, Donnie, people are hopeless. And when you're hopeless, you're eventually going to quit at what you're doing, and that's dangerous, and it could be detrimental to your health, the people around you's health, and your loved ones. And you get risky behavior in there, man. Socially, emotionally, with hope, anything's achievable. Anything. You can do anything. If I can go from 305 pounds and do an Ironman, anybody listening to this can do anything. Think about it. I hope to be a better husband and father. I hope to be a better teacher. I hope to raise my son to be better than me, right? I hope to race in the Ironman World Championships, right? I hope to lead a righteous life. I hope to lead a righteous life and God-driven life. Faith is a huge part of me, but hope is what those teachers from Paulsboro gave me, the coaches, people like Glassboro, people I'm friends with. They give me hope. Hopefully I give them hope. But that's what hope is. Hope is the thing that will take you to where you got to go. It just doesn't happen though, right? Because every day you control 4 things, Donnie. You control your attitude, actions, behavior, and your effort, right? But hope is that thing. And without it, you end up how I was, Donnie. Standing on top of a Hyatt Regency, 50 floors up, get ready, jump off and commit suicide, man. That's hopeless.
Yeah, no. I just want you bring that up again. You were suicidal, man. Anybody out there listening, before we get rid of you, if they're maybe going through things you went through, maybe abuse, sexual, whatever, suicidal thoughts, anything you want to leave our viewers with. We had some amazing feedback today on this show. What would you tell them? What do you want to leave our Hungry for Hope Nation with, Mike?
Never, ever, ever quit, man, because it is not over. You see over to my side here, I have a life word. It's right here. Finish, man. That's my.
I like that.
I have a one word, but my life word is finished. What I want to leave them with is this: you control your own life. The decisions you make will determine the life you lead. It is never over, but here's the thing. It is okay not to be okay. It is. But you have to communicate, and you got to communicate, Donnie, to the right people. There are people that you can communicate to that will just put fuel on the fire. They won't listen to you. But you got to communicate to the right people. You know, that was the last key for me, Donnie, as we're ending up here, is speaking to a therapist. And like I said, people thought it was taboo. I'm not really worried about that anymore. I'll always talk to a therapist because you have to talk to people. You know, communication, right? Communication is how we lead people. And Donnie, check it out, right? Where there's a void in communication, that void will be filled with negativity. So communicate your feelings. So what I can leave them with is communicate your feelings, communicate. Because if there's a void in the communication, I'm gonna tell you right now, it's gonna be filled with negativity, and that could lead to hopelessness, and that could lead to bad stuff. We want to be hopeful.
That's great, man. Your story's amazing, Mike. I could talk to you for another hour, but we have another show, Wire to Wire Sports, coming on Toxic Radio. They're a great sports show. They're going to be on at 9, and we got to get you out of here, man. But I just want to thank you.
If we do a book, we'll come back on and do again and talk about the book with Bill Evans, man. You know,
we got to do this again. I got a million questions.
Yeah, we have a lot more questions. I'm a huge fan of Bill Evans, who you're writing a book with. We're going to say it now. We're going to have you back on another time, but we're going to let Wire to Wire Sports come on and do their thing. Mike, we're going to get out of here. We just want to thank you again from me, from Tim, from Yanni, Hungry for Hope Nation. Thank you all, and we're out of here.
You three are amazing. Take well, man. Stay well.
Thanks, Mike.
Yep.